Are you tired of your valuable ideas and suggestions getting lost in the shuffle? Well, that is why I'm introducing Direct Suggest, the revolutionary digital suggestion box that puts your voice front and center. With Direct Suggest, you have the power to make a difference in your organization. Direct Suggest provides value to organizations in various industries worldwide, including notable brands like Comcast, TD Bank, and Nokia. And here's the best part. Direct Suggest only costs 50 cents per employee per month, making it an affordable solution for businesses of all sizes. Plus, they have an incredibly high ROI and savings potential with an average 33 times return on investment. The implementation process is also a breeze. Once committed, setting up Direct Suggest from start to finish can be completed in as quickly as a week or less. Don't let your ideas or your team's ideas go unnoticed. Visit directsuggest.com today and start by making a difference with Direct Suggest. Use the promo code HUMANHR for your extended 60-day free trial. Again, visit directsuggest.com to learn more, and remember to use promo code HUMANHR for an extended free trial. Direct Suggest, where your voice matters. Welcome to the Bringing the Human Back to Human Resources podcast. I'm Tracy Chernoff, and I've spent my entire professional career in HR. Each week, we'll explore the delicate balance between people and business with the aim to reconnect the two and create meaningful outcomes. Listen in as I share my own experiences, challenge the status quo, and chat with guests from various industries about our mission to bring the human back to human resources. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here for another week. As you can probably already tell, this recording is also being done in my parents' house in New Jersey. I've had so many recordings here that at this point, when I look back at all of them, I think I'll reminisce on all the places that I was before we found a place to live. So with that said, we are going to jump into an amazing, amazing topic today, which is all about empowerment and empowering teams. And then on top of that, how teams can be the most productive possible. And to do that, I have a guest with me, Jeanette Dorazio, and she is the CEO of Lead Pages, a no-code website and landing page builder. And Jeanette loves helping entrepreneurs turn their business dreams into a reality. She knows firsthand what it takes to run a successful business through her experience holding various executive level positions at leading organizations, including enterprise software and cloud technology company Oracle, social commerce startup 8th Bridge, global electronic payments solution leader Verifone, and global data and software services company Solera. As a woman in tech, Jeanette is passionate about breaking down barriers and championing the inclusion and success of women in STEM fields, which I think we can all get behind. So Jeanette, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Tracy. It's a pleasure to finally get to talk to you.
Yes, likewise. I'm glad that we have this opportunity to connect on such an important topic. And, naturally, given your background and the industry that you're in, I think you're the perfect person to ask, all of these questions from. I mean, you obviously being in a role like CEO, for example, you have not only the pressures of leading a business, but you also are probably constantly under pressure and watched with a watchful eye, so to speak, by your team. So can you walk us through a little bit about how you, throughout your career, have helped to empower the teams that you have had working for you?
Oh, great question. I'd welcome the opportunity to talk about that. As you've mentioned, I've had various different positions, different software companies, large companies, small companies, startups, somewhere in between. And the theme is always the same for me, right? How do I build high-performing teams that work well together, have some fun, but get the job done, right? And for me, having been an athlete, I grew up as an athlete. I think I played anywhere from 3 to 5 different sports a year, but through all of that, it was all about teams and how you successfully win a game, practice, et cetera, right? How you gel together as a team. So I've taken what I learned growing up and even all the way through college, my years in college working in teams, and brought that into the business world. It's the same, right? And when I'm looking at and building teams, I rely on people's strengths, right? A lot of times, when you're recruiting people, bringing people into organizations, you sometimes look and stick to that job description, right? And do they check all those boxes in those roles? I look at that, sure, that's a good place for me and my HR business partners to start. But I also look at what strengths they bring to the team. Because everybody has something that they're good at and something that they're not good at, and bringing those people together to form that team is how I've proven success with them. You also get a sense of empowerment. That's the big thing for me with with building these teams, is you have to make them feel empowered to make the choices, right? Bottom up leadership, empathetic leadership has really become important, and kind of the new trend going on, if you will, if there should be trends in the workforce, I guess. But um, uh, it's all about allowing them to leverage their strengths, to bring them best selves to work as the team, and really allowing them and letting them know it's okay to try something and fail, right? Learn, let's put these things together. So it's all about bottoms up empowerment, top down leadership. I hate saying that because it's really not how I roll. It's more of an equal leadership, right? I like to bring everybody to the table and give them a voice in and how we should, tackle a hard problem, celebrate a win, what have you. But that's what the different pieces I've employed during my time as a leader and a woman in technology is giving people the chance to have a seat at the table, to have a voice, is really important. And that's what I see happens between successful and not successful teams.
Yeah. I love this concept that you've shared around having a seat at the table and enabling others to be able to have a seat at the table. This is like something that, of course, everyone throws around all the time. Like, how do you get a seat
Sure.
at the table? And it comes up a lot in HR, especially with
Yeah.
smaller teams, as I'm sure you've seen, that HR is not always the first position hired.
Right.
Or at least from a leadership perspective, especially maybe some of the more admin or generalist roles. But
Yeah.
when I reflect on that, I think about the message that sometimes it sends intrinsically when there isn't that person who is, generally speaking, quote unquote, representing the internal
Mhm.
customer or the employee, right? And so I really love that you've brought this up, and it actually leads me to want to ask you about something that I think we spoke about a little bit when we first connected,
Yeah.
which is this idea that you have around your HR business partners, that everyone on your team that is within the HR division or department
Yep.
is a business partner. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of the time, as I could say this because I'm in
Yeah.
HR, a lot of the time we as in HR professionals are often seen as not part of business leadership or not part of
Right.
the business, which I think is one of the common misconceptions. So can you tell us, especially given that the
Yeah.
majority of the listeners are in HR themselves, can you tell
Yeah.
us where this concept and like ethos came from to really instill this mentality within not only your leadership but also
Yeah.
within your business?
Right. Great question. I find, yeah, HR as, or people and culture is what we call them in my current company here at Lead Pages,
Mm,
but it's so important. And I think you hit it right on the head, Tracy, is they've been relegated to this, at least in the past, this admin type, position. They do payroll, they make sure everybody's benefits are done, which is important, right? Absolutely
totally.
100% important.
Very.
But it's not the people you bring in if you have to have. I mean, they are the people you bring in when you have difficult conversations, or maybe you have an employee that isn't, just isn't a right fit for the company, right? Sure, HR is there, but they need to help you, as a leader, as a manager, do your job well, and that's how I've evolved working with my HR partners, right? It's not those tactical, tasky type things. It's strategy. I work with my current HR business partner. I have several of them, in fact. But we talk about strategy. And what do I mean by strategy? That's kind of this big word, but strategically from a people perspective, right? How do we want to grow the organization? It could be topics such as during COVID, right? How do we make sure that people are engaged? It's a two-dimensional world. People are isolated and not together like they used to be. So, how do we combat that? What are the tactics? Diversity, equity, inclusion is very important to me. So it's strategically working with my business partners, HR business partners, on how do we foster that? What do we need to do, right? Topics such as performance management. What does that mean? I cringe. I think about the days, some of the companies I've been in, the larger companies, where it's, you've got to have your performance reviews written every year, and there's, certain categories and grades and all that stuff, which is great. It's fine, but I find it exhausting, as do many other leaders, right?
Yes.
But it's strategically, how can we do something different? How can we disrupt what has traditionally been known as HR? So that's how I partner with my HR colleagues, right? So having them at the table, they're part of my leadership team. So they are, they're brought in to consult on all various type of topics, but also to plan the fun things too, right? So it's example, we as a company, we think it's very important for your whole self, right? So we were looking at how can we extend benefits from a wellness perspective, and it's beyond just your health, medical, dental, those type of things, but it's wellness or financial fitness too, right? Our people and culture team put together a benefit for a financial planner, right? And it's, some people don't know how to approach that. And what does that look like?
Totally.
So we've got that. We've got, reimbursement for, there's typical, health club memberships, but it's beyond that, right? Maybe it's the Calm app. I have the Calm app. I love it.
It is great.
I put that on at night. So that's how I view my HR, my people and culture team. Is they're not co-located with me here in Minneapolis. They're elsewhere, but they are absolutely 100% part of my leadership team, and a key consultant for me, and help that we have.
That's wonderful to hear. I was reflecting, as I always do when someone is answering this one of these very broad stroked questions that I ask. And I was just thinking about how often on my podcast we talk about just this idea of how important it is to be really connected with the business and other business leaders. And that sometimes there is this, depending on who is in a role like yours or who is at the executive level, there can be a struggle sometimes to really put forth, movement on the people side. However, once there is the buy-in and that relationship built between the HR team or people and culture or people ops team and the other business leaders, there's so much opportunity to build better programs, to build, enhance strategy and all of those things that you spoke about. So it's nice to hear from someone who's doing it and has that great relationship with her HR team. Like it's a wonderful thing to be able to reflect on those things that we've talked about in prior episodes. So thank you for that. And, I would love to shift gears. Yeah, it's so important, I'm sure that the listeners are like, we're rooting for Jeanette. This is amazing. Now let me go and see if Lead Pages is hiring. That's what's going to happen here. But, I'd love to shift gears just a moment to kind of come back to this idea of productivity and empowerment, because the two are related. Even from a general concept that employees, some companies are tracking employees' time worked. Right. There's a misconception, generally speaking, that you have to be in the office to be productive, even though we spent the last 3 years disproving this, right? Where is the intersection for you between productivity and empowerment? Do you start with empowerment to drive productivity, or is it the productivity that enables empowerment, or is it totally different from that?
Ooh, good question. Kind of a little bit of chicken and egg there sometimes, but in my experience, I'll speak from my experience. It's empowerment drives that productivity. If let's talk about it the opposite way. So productivity, you're putting certain quotas on people perhaps, or they have to get so much done in X amount of time, right? And that's very applicable to any business. But hammering on that and micromanaging that actually I found has the opposite effect, right? You get people that they're not motivated. They just kind of come in and just do the minimum, right? A lot of times they don't take care of the customer. So I subscribe, and with my leadership style, it's actually the opposite. It's empowering them to, we have guidelines, right? I mean, we all have projects and things that we need to do, but really sitting down as a team, depending on what it is, and how are we going to tackle that project? How are we going to service the customer? And that could be internal too, right? Because we have some, like HR is their customers most of the time an internal team. So how are we going to do that? And really stepping up a little bit, and as a leader, as a manager, kind of depending on where you are in the organization, it's allowing them that freedom to be creative, to make those decisions, but knowing that, I find we've got to put some kind of deadline out there. Otherwise things kind of go on forever, and you have a little bit of you could get some interesting, as I call science experiments that come out of that, which isn't necessarily bad. But, giving them the autonomy to do that, to take care of our customers. I'll give you an example. Our customer support team here at Lead Pages is top, best in the business, best in SaaS business. I'm kind of biased. They're an amazing team. But we give them, we foster and help them feel empowered to make a decision, right? Maybe they've got to make a quick snap decision where a customer's struggling with an issue, or, maybe they've just not found value in the product and want to get out of their subscription or some refund back. We give our team the latitude to do that, right? To make that decision. We've got certain steps, depends on where it escalates, but what I find is that they end up taking care of the customer. So the customer feels good, they feel good, and then they go on to the next thing, right? Oh, gee, I was so successful. I had so much fun doing that. Let me look for the next issue. So you got this ladder effect that happens, right? And so somebody solved a really cool problem, took care of the customer. Okay, what can I do next, right? So you've got this kind of multiplier effect that goes on. So I've seen it. I personally subscribe to empower the employee. Productivity comes after. They take care of customer. They take care of you. They take care of the business. And for me, that's as a leader, as somebody who is very passionate about developing people, it's kind of great to stand back and watch the success happen. And
that's fabulous.
And it takes you through some, businesses have cycles up and down, right? And it takes you through some of those trying times, or maybe some of those hard challenges that you have, versus if we were just focused on productivity, you're not going to get that cohesiveness, that, one team, one mission, as you're going through maybe, a bit of a down cycle. So yeah, that's how I view it. That's how I roll.
The growth of any business relies on the workforce behind it, and Namely knows that if you can wow your people, you can power your business. Namely is the all-in-one HR solution that empowers you to engage and develop your people in an intuitive platform, so you can make your life easier and your employees happier. Namely's award-winning technology gives your employees the career and connections they need to truly become part of your business. Whether you have 20 or 1,000 employees, Namely handles the essential HR, payroll, and compliance needs all through their modern and integrated platform. With Namely, your team stays engaged with a seamless interface and self-service tools to request PTO, acknowledge peers, review pay stubs, and enroll in benefits, while you get the time and data you need to focus on your core business initiatives. As Namely helps you easily handle everything from onboarding, payroll, time tracking, open enrollment, employee engagement, and so much more. Make your life easier and power your business with Namely today. Learn how you can simplify your HR processes today at namely.com. That's namely.com. If your company is remote or hybrid, then you know just how difficult it can be to grow your company's culture beyond a pre-scheduled Zoom happy hour or occasional lunch and learn. Well, this week's sponsor is here to solve that. They're called CultureBot. CultureBot has devised what will likely become the gold standard for growing and blossoming a company culture inside of Slack. The app is like a sidekick for any HR or people professional, automating a lot of the mundane tasks you probably are forgetting to do on a daily basis. Things like birthday and work anniversary celebrations, team shoutouts and kudos, employee introductions, and remote games. It even has health and wellness tips and conversation starters. If that piques your interest, this will get you even more excited. Today, I'm able to share a special promotion for listeners of the podcast. You can get your first 6 months of CultureBot for 50% off. Plus, if your team is under 25 employees, CultureBot is free forever. So if you're looking for a way to create a culture of appreciation and drive increased engagement and togetherness across your team, I definitely recommend checking out CultureBot. Go to getculturebot.com/humanhr. That's getculturebot.com/humanhr to get the offer. Plus, I've added the link in the show notes so you can just click right there. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful thing to hear compared to what you had said in the beginning too around like playing to people's strengths, because I'm sure that innately when you hire people and you focus on what they're really good at and what ultimately they're probably passionate about, that you can, for lack of a better phrase, but relinquish control and enable them and empower them to be decision makers, to have an influence, and really kind of take the bull by the horns, so to speak. And I'm curious, given your background and wealth of experience, has this always been easy for you? Because you definitely make it sound so easy, this idea of just hiring the people who are, going to take all of these things and solve these problems. And it should be that easy. I'm not being facetious there, right? It should be, let's play to people's strengths and then see what they can do, because that's where you have this like amazing culture being built. But was it always easy for you? And on top of that, what are some of the struggles or the challenges when it comes to that level of empowerment? Like, is it hard to relinquish control and all of these things?
So a lot to unwrap in that question. So I will say, no, it wasn't always easy. Part of that's the learning process, just, me personally, as a leader in who I am, of the different teams that I've had the, great benefit of leading over the years. I've had some great mentors as well that I've watched how they've done this. So it's not something that, coming out of the gate, I knew how to do. I've honed it over the years, right? And really, I think I said at the beginning too, drawing back to my experience as an athlete and bringing that in. You're not going to hit home runs all the time, right? In the end of the day, you're dealing with human beings. There's a lot of talk about AI being able to screen things and whatever, sure. But at the end of the day, it's not going to do it all. It's person. It's a human being. So there are going to be things that, you thought you brought the right person in, right culture. They seem to have all the things, for that one piece you're looking for from a strength perspective in a team, and it doesn't work out for whatever reason. And that happens. I think the first couple times it happened to me, I was just devastated because I felt I failed them. And how was I going to recover from that? I'm like I said, I'm a big proponent of, you want to fail so you learn, right? And I just learned that sometimes it's okay. It's not going to be perfect all the time. It's human beings, right? There's lots of things going on with that. But you do the best you can. And so, advice to those early leaders out there that are trying to figure it out, leading people is hard. It's not easy. It's not for everyone. But really practicing and working with different various types of people, building those relationships, you kind of start to pick it out and know the correct questions to ask, like from an interview, or working with your HR business partner too, because they come at it and they know the job description, maybe they know the business. If they've been with you long enough, they kind of know who you're looking for, right? Recruiters are excellent at this, but working with them, they'll kind of learn too, right? How we build these teams and with their strengths. So not easy. It's not, for somebody that's more kind of analytical based, quantitative based, it's kind of hard because you could do all kinds of different, Campbell Strengths, all kinds of PI surveys. I mean, you get a little bit of glimpse, but a lot of it is just talking and bringing those people in and seeing how they fit. So yeah, I didn't, it took a long time for me to figure it out. Sometimes it's different in the companies too, right? Bigger, larger corporations I've worked with, there's a very definitive process for, how they recruit people in, who you're going to have on your team, right? We need this, we need that. All the way down to, a startup where it's like, all right, well, you don't necessarily maybe have an HR partner with you. So yeah, I've honed that over the years, as well as, several people on my team here as well. You kind of figure that out and place it in. It's very qualitative. Sometimes it's instinct a little bit. What we've done here at Lead Pages is we have our mission, values, vision, and we bring a lot of, when we're looking at people or building teams, bring a lot of that back to those pieces, which kind of helps you, build those teams. But so
absolutely.
It's not easy.
Thank you for your honesty and transparency in this. I knew you would take that question head on. But it really is great to hear, because I think there's just so much pressure all the time, right? Everyone,
absolutely.
That if you care about what you do, it doesn't matter whether you're a leader or not, there's pressure. There's no such thing as an easy job. There's no such thing as an easy experience, right? And so when you care about what you do and the way that you impact people, whether they're people around you or customers that are external, you are going to feel that pressure to grow and do things better. And I think part of that also, even in just like looking at the way that the questions that I get or the outreach that I get from the podcast, there is always this sense of, I'm not doing this today and I want to be good at it. How do I get good at it now? And what you shared is that over your experience and over time, these are things that you were able to improve on and gain experience with, which is really sometimes all you can do is just continue to practice, like being an athlete, continue to practice until you get that skill or achieve, the level of skill that you want within that, particular category. So it's really important, I think, for everyone to hear that.
Yeah. It's not easy, right? Being in a leadership role, it's not for everybody, right? And you're right. I hate saying practice on people, it feels weird. But it's more about your experience, right? I have worked with so many different people, great people over the years, from all corners of the world, various different cultures. And that's really helped me hone that in and really understand here's how it's successful, right? And how it can work. So,
From what I gather too, there's such an impact, like a trickle down effect once now you're in this place where empowerment is obviously, it is a little bit easier for you. Maybe it doesn't take as
Sure.
much thought or intention before you use that muscle, right?
Right.
As if, for example, as like in the beginning. But I just think about what that does for new leaders when they see that. And there's always, I think I've shared this on the podcast before, that when you
Yeah.
see something that someone else does that you appreciate or that you want to emulate, it's important to take note of what it is that they do, how they do it, and maybe to even ask the question, how did you get good at this? Or how can I be more
Yep.
like you in this
Yeah.
area? And so I just think about on your team or the teams that you've had in the past, for someone that maybe is newer or greener in a leadership role, or maybe wants to be a leader, and they see what you do to empower the team and how you drive this feeling and this culture, that then that's for them the norm. And that norm is then what they can propagate and or perpetuate within their own teams or future teams. And it really, I always think about positive cultures within businesses as something that's not just good for that particular business, but it's also great for the business that person might go to in the future if they were to ever
Absolutely.
leave.
Yep. No,
So it's,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I think too, Tracy, that's what I've done in my career is I mentioned I've had several fantastic mentors, and I've watched, how do they interact with the C-level? How do they interact with their
Mm,
colleagues? How do they treat the teams and the people that work for them, that work with them, right? And I'm very curious. I'm a quick learner. I love to ask questions. So do that, right? If you're a up and coming leader, you're considering a leadership role. Do exactly like you said, Tracy. Have coffee with somebody. It doesn't even have to be who you work with, but maybe somebody. Maybe you go to church with somebody, or maybe it's your son or daughter's soccer team, right? And the coach is, hey, gosh, they're doing it right. What are they doing there? Be curious, ask questions, and watch. Right, you're spot on. Just see the good and the bad. And I've had bad leaders. I mean, yeah,
yes, that's normal.
I wouldn't like to say that they intentionally were that way. Many different reasons, why things happen. But
Hmm.
for me, as I was growing up with my career, it was, I took note. Yep, I like this. Not like that style so much. So again, back to practicing and just watching and learning is how you become good at that.
Yes. And this is an episode that I have done in the past too. Like when you have bad leadership, how it helps to figure out what you don't want to do. To your point, what you just
Mm-hmm.
shared, when as you grow up in your career, knowing what you
Yeah.
want out of, what you want to
Yeah.
be or what you like and appreciate is just as that is important. And it's just as important to also know what you
Yep.
absolutely do not want to be as a
No.
leader. So thanks to all the bad leaders out there for teaching both me and Jeanette what not to do.
Exactly. Exactly.
we're
Right?
better. We're better thanks to you. But
Completely.
just to kind of close us out, because truly, I think
Yeah.
you've shared so much insight here on this episode. I'd love to hear if you have a piece of advice for any listeners that maybe are self-reflecting right now, who are maybe
Hmm.
leaders or have an opportunity where they've been stepping up or stepping into a leadership role, and maybe they're struggling with empowering their team. Maybe they find themselves feeling this need for
Yeah.
control, which is also totally normal. What advice do you have for them so they can start to put into action these skills that enable their teams rather than stifle their teams?
Great question. I think um, I've actually been reading a lot about this lately, right? Lots of thought leadership articles
Oh.
about it. Just um, coming out of the roller coaster that was COVID, right? Going to a virtual workplace and then kind of coming back out of hybrid. And what I'm seeing too is a lot of those, I'm going to call them early career leaders, that are trying to figure out the bounds between micromanagement or empowering my team, right? That's a
Mm-hmm.
big spectrum there. And how do I do that in a two-dimensional world, right? Where there's a lot of ups and downs, right? And you're looking at it, you think, oh, I got this nailed, right? My team's we're really firing on all cylinders. It's great. I'm feeling great. All of a sudden, 2 weeks later, you go, oh, the bottom fell out. What happened? What's going on? So my advice would be stick with it, right? Be honest, be genuine, but maybe back off on the micromanagement, right? Don't, everybody's tendency is when things aren't right, I want to hold on. I think, you just said that, right? I need to get control. It's actually the opposite, right? Take a step back, talk to your team, ask them, how are they doing? Right. Because a lot of it, there's so much, again, they're humans. There could be things going on outside. What do they need to be able to be in a better place? Or, hey, maybe you've got a really high performer on your team, like one of those star A players that all of a sudden you see them disengage, and it's just, you stop and you go, what the heck happened? They could need more, right? Maybe they're bored, right? They're just so used to performing at a high level that you need to give them something else, right? Delegate. That's the hardest thing for early career managers and leaders to delegate, right? Yes. I still fight with my senior leaders sometimes. It's like, just I think Brene Brown says it, right? Delegate to elevate. And it's so hard to do. But do that. Take a step back. Ask them, how are you feeling? What do you need to succeed? And that starts to give you a clue as to where you need to fall on that spectrum, right? Sometimes, truly, you have somebody that you're leading that's just stuck, and they may need you to help them with a little bit of micromanagement, right? They may need to just sit with them and, hey, let's just detail out your tasks, right? And maybe that's all they need to get unstuck, and they go, right? But it's really tuning in, understanding, right, that person, that person on your team, what they need, and listening, right? Because a lot of leaders don't listen because they think they have the answer, but you have to step back and actually listen to what they're saying. And give them the support they need, and encourage them, and tell them when they're doing a good job, right? You don't get that a lot. You don't. I see people default to negative feedback versus positive feedback. So you've got to be able to balance those both. We have here in the company, we have a platform that we use. It's called, Worktango. Not that anybody, I'm not saying that as a plug for the company necessarily, but find an application like that in the virtual world. We found is helpful, right? It's rewarding people for doing something good, for thanking me, right? It's thank you. And our employees love it. Because yes, there's a monetary incentive off of it, right? You give people points and stuff like that. But it's just recognizing somebody that helped you out or did a good job always goes a long way. So kind of a long answer to your question, but that's my advice for those new leaders is build those relationships, talk to your team. Don't be afraid to give the good feedback and the bad feedback. A lot of people crave more constructive feedback. Tell me how I can improve. And as especially newer leaders, that's a little bit daunting, right? We don't want to do that, but that's how you end up with a very strong team, and something you'll learn to take through the rest of your career.
It's great advice, and there's no better way to end this episode, because I think everyone should save this, download it, take notes. I mean, this was such a wonderful example of how we can all grow while we're also growing and developing others. So thank you so much, Jeanette, for all of your insights and sharing the experience that you've had and how you've developed these skills. And with that said, where can the listeners connect with you, learn more about Lead Pages, and maybe even potentially learn more about what you are so passionate about?
Sure. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Jeanette Dorazio, which we'll have here. I'm sure Tracy will put into the podcast show notes and everything. Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I do not use Twitter or X. I think it's now called a little bit of a rebrand there. I'm not there a lot, but I love talking to people on LinkedIn. It's a great platform to do so. You can find me too at our website, leadpages.com, if you want to learn more about the company and what we do. Our values as a company and what we focus on are great there too. If you're an entrepreneur, come see us because we can help you get things started. Marketing is kind of that daunting task that not a lot of people know about and they get a little frightened about. But we will make you successful and help you do what you need to do. But that's how you can find me, or Jeanette.Dorazio at leadpages.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jeanette. Really appreciate your time.
Tracy. Thank you. It was great to be here.
Great to have you.
Hey, just before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you are the first to hear when an episode drops each week. And maybe leave a 5-star review and a comment about how much you loved this episode. Plus, if you have someone in mind who would really enjoy this episode, make sure you share it with them. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week.